Want to make sure you never miss a new release from the official creepypasta.com YouTube channel again? Be sure to subscribe and hit that bell to turn on notifications.
Hatman and Little Girl by ChemicalChaos. I was spending the night at my girlfriend's house. I woke up to get a snack around 3 a.m. Her house is extremely dark at night, to where you can't see a thing. I'm always a little scared to be over there, because I have an intense fear of the paranormal, and she is connected to it. When she was little, she had an imaginary friend named Pyrgus, and he turned out to be a ghost who still speaks to her. Her mother also had numerous brushes with ghosts. Her bedroom is at the end of the hall, which leads out into the kitchen, and I was already feeling paranoid as I walked down that hall, which is, again, incredibly dark. When I got to the kitchen, I was reaching for a plate when I saw a shadow on the wall. I knew this was a shadow man because, well, it was a human-shaped shadow about 6 feet tall, wearing a fedora. I was so freaked out, I returned to my girlfriend's bedroom and got into her bed. She has 2 beds, and we were sharing one. I happened to look over near her other bed, as my eyes always scan over a room to make sure nothing's watching me. She has a chair near the second bed, and on that chair sat a little girl, again made of shadows. Up until now, I always thought that shadow people were restricted to the male gender, and that all the stories involving shadow females were false. But now I know it to be true. Both the man and the girl did nothing, simply watched me until I realized they were there. My girlfriend and I always have lengthy conversations about ghosts and why we see them. Although the shadow people were at her house, she does not believe in them. She claims that if she saw one she would not be scared. In fact, she would try to give it a hug. I, on the other hand, am terrified. My first unsettling encounter with the unknown, by Saiman. I'm sure many of you have heard of the Hatman, as he is called on the internet. I've only recently discovered that the strange experience of seeing the Hatman was more widespread than just my own. I've seen the Hatman, and it is something that has bothered me my entire life. The first time I remember seeing him was around the age of 5. At the time we were living in Fredericksburg, in a small house located in a quiet neighbourhood. It would have been around 1990 when all of this began. I don't remember my first encounter exactly, but I do remember many subsequent encounters with the Hatman. Basically, I would wake up in the middle of the night to use the restroom like any normal child would, I suppose. My mother always left the door to my bedroom, which I shared with my younger brother, open, and more often than not, he would be standing there. The Hatman was a dark, shadowy apparition. He appeared to be about 6 or so feet tall. He wore a large brimmed hat that always covered his eyes. He was dressed in a long coat of some sort, most likely a trench coat. The area where there would be facial features was shrouded in a misty grey colour that gave the appearance that no face existed on him. The worst part of all, I suppose, at least in my memory, was the fact that his legs just vanished a bit past his knees. He always just stood there, never moved. Sometimes he was right in the doorway, other times a bit back, sometimes more to the right, others more to the left. He never entered my bedroom. I'm not sure why not, to be honest. I would have passed this off as merely a troubled imagination, if it wasn't for the fact that it followed me. When I was 8 years old, we moved about 16 miles out of town, about halfway between Harper and Fredericksburg. He was there too. His behaviour never changed. He'd just stand there, apparently staring at me. As I'm sure you can imagine, I was quite terrified, and decided that wetting my bed was a better idea than trying to face the terrifying apparition that haunted me every night. As a result, I kept what I saw a secret from my family for years, and instead just took the shame of being a bedwetter instead. Eventually, when I was 11 years old, My parents divorced, and we moved halfway across state to Hallettsville. I never saw him again. Many years later, when I was in my early 20s, I finally told my mother and brother about what I had seen while I was a child living in Fredericksburg. They seemed concerned, but not as much as I was when my brother told me something chilling. After I had moved out of my mother's house when I was almost 16, my brother told me that he got up to use the restroom once, and standing outside of my old bedroom was the Hatman, staring at my closed door. The Dark Hatman by EveryHour. I have lived in a very haunted house my entire life. I see apparitions, hear disembodied voices and footsteps, and witness poltergeist activity all the time. And it's not just me. My friends and family witness it too. Some things I only see or hear once or twice, but there are several spirits that I see all the time. One of those is what I call the Hatman. The first time I saw him, I was about 3 or 4 years old. My parents had gone away and left me with a babysitter. My babysitter didn't watch me very well, and I was able to sneak into a storage room that my parents had told me not to go into. While I was in there, I got the sense that someone was standing behind me, and that they were very angry. I turned around and saw a tall black figure standing over me. He had no features, except for a top hat and a long trench coat. I screamed and ran out of the room. After that experience, I would always see him peeking around corners at me, only to disappear. For a while, I stopped seeing him, until I was in first grade. I was sitting in the living room on the couch by myself, when I heard a loud crash in the kitchen. I went to investigate and found nothing there. I shrugged and went back into the living room, to see him walk across the living room and into the hallway. As you can imagine, I screamed. The last time I saw him, I was about 9 or 10. I was walking with my little brother into his room. His room is what used to be the storage room when I first saw Hatman. I opened the door, and we both saw Hatman sitting on my brother's bed. My brother said "man" and pointed, while I just stood there in shock. Immediately, Hatman sprung up and started running towards us. I screamed, picked up my brother, and ran from the room. I haven't seen him since, except for occasionally out of the corner of my eye, but I feel his presence all the time, and I don't like it. After doing some research, I've discovered that tons of people see him throughout the whole world. It's weird. I don't know what he is. Shadow Man in Top Hat by Lady 4. I have always heard spirits. I hear them in my mind, and I sense them, but I have never before seen them. That is, until now. I was laying down on my bed with my 15-month-old son, with the light off to get him to go to sleep. My husband was down the hall in the lounge with the light on, playing his PS3 and waiting to come and get me, so that he could take our son to his bed. The hallway door was shut, and you couldn't see any light whatsoever. Anyway, I was laying down with my son, with his dream light, which is a penguin night light that changes colours, on the end of the bed. My son was asleep by now, but I was waiting for my husband to come and get our son off the bed and off my arm, so I could regain feeling in it. I had my eyes shut, but when I opened them, I saw a solid outline of a man wearing a top hat, which I first assumed to be my husband coming to get our son. I whispered my husband's name, but there was no response. By this stage, I was getting nervous. The man started moving from the doorway to the corner of the bed, and back out again. This man did this about 5 times. I was really freaked out, but I didn't want to wake my son, so I closed my eyes and prayed that the man would go away. When I opened them, the man was still hovering around the doorway, and I swear I saw him smirking. After that, I grabbed my son and put him in his bed and ran to get my husband. My husband can see spirit and sometimes hears them, but he didn't think that there was anything to worry about.